What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tayes TEA. This is week number 3, episode number 9, and we all know that today is Throwback Thursday, so that means that we are going over African American history today being October 18th. So there was no prominent information to be found in African American history today other than a few birthdays. So we're going to go with what's going on in African American history this week between October 15th and October 19th. So for starters, I have on October 16th of 1901, Booker T. Washington was the first African American to dine at the White House. He was welcomed in by the president at that time to dine for the first time, setting history straight. Definitely want to thank him for that. Since then, of course, we've had our first African American mixed race president. So definitely want to thank the gods and our ancestors for paving way for us in this day and age. Next, we have October 17th in 1969. Dr. Clifton Wharton Jr. was actually named as the first African American president of Michigan State University, which at the time was a predominantly white major learning institution. So that was a great trailblaze that he did, and Michigan is my home state, so I definitely want to thank him for opening those doors. October 19th of 1944, the U.S. Navy actually opened their doors to welcome in African American women for the first time. So definitely want to thank the U.S. Navy for actually giving us a chance back then in 1944. The quote of the day comes from Paul Robeson, and it is, "The telling of these truths is an important part of our work in building a strong and broad peace movement in the United States." Such powerful words, and it means a lot, especially coming from where Paul Robeson was coming from at that time. So we're going to go into birthdays, starting off with Ebenezer Don Carlos Bassett, who was the first African American diplomat. He was born this week in the year 1833. We have Camilla Williams, who was an opera singer. She was born this week in the year 1919. We have Chuck Berry, whose birth name is Charles Berry. He was a singer and one of the founders of rock and roll. He was born this week in the year 1926. We have Terry McMillan, who was a novelist. She was born this week in the year 1951. We have Vicki Winans, who was actually the first gospel artist to be signed onto the MCA records at that time. She was born this week in 1953. We have Eric Benet, who's a well-known singer. He was born this week in the year 1966. We have Roy Hargrove, who was a jazz trumpeter. He was born this week in the year 1969. We have Dr. Mae Carol Jemison, who was actually the first African American woman in space. She was born this week in the year 1956. And last but not least, we have Ginuwine, who's also a well-known singer, born as Elgin Lumpkin. He was actually born this week in the year 1970. So we're going to wrap up our African American history for this week in October. Again, that is from October 15th through October 19th. Definitely want to thank you guys for listening in to TayesTEA, and I hope you all enjoy your evening.